Today I'm going to pin and spread Idolomantis diabolica, which is the genus species for the devil's rose mantis, or the large African flower mantis. This is the only species of mantis in its genus. So this one is probably the largest species that mimics a rose or a flower. And there are a lot of leaf mimic mantids, a lot of orchid mantids, flower mantids, all kinds of stuff. But this one, where it's located and its size and kind of how its color pattern is, distinguishes it slightly from the rest. So I've already hydrated it, so it's going to be ready to pin and spread here in a second. And this is a fairly large mantid here. And this is a female. And typical green mimicry on the back for leaves and leaf litter, foliage, things like that. And on the other side, you're going to see a very large striking pattern, different colors. And so what I'm going to do is I can already tell that a lot of the times when they come dried that they're damaged, or at least their articulation is been separated or pulled apart. And then when I pull the cover off this one to hydrate it, I could tell that the thorax and head up here had separated from the abdomen. Not really a problem for bug pinning. This is actually going to make it easier on me, because what I'd like to do with these guys is spread them so you can see the bottom side. And when you want to spread an insect, you want to do it in a way where you can kind of flatten it out. Make sure everything's nice, symmetrical if you like. Spread the wings, if it has wings and you want to show them off like this one does. And then you also want to be able to make sure that you can see what you want to present. When it comes to this particular mantis, if I wanted the wings out, it's just easier for me to pin him down the way he is. But I want to show the bottom side of the mantis when he's completely dried and ready to be framed. And so to turn him over to spread his wings against the backdrop here can sometimes be a little bit more difficult, just with the mass here of the abdomen and the legs in the way. And so what I can do now, because he's separated, this is the way he came. He de-articulated himself in the process of drying and shipping. I can actually pin this part upside down, and then this side right side up to get the wings out, or I can do it the other way with the wings down. It gives me options. It's not really something to be upset about if they fall apart. They're pretty easy to fix. So in any event, this is the side that I think is pretty cool. You can see the eyes here. Let me see if I can get that a little closer to the camera. And you can see that it's got very large arms, like a leaf or a rose pattern here. See if I can get it to zoom in for a second. It's kind of blurry. I apologize about that. And then you can see these classic quintessential mantis arms here with the claws, the spines, and then how they collapse with all the little spines in here. So I'm going to pull this out, pull the arm out. But like we always do when we're pinning insects that are hydrated, we want to take the larger pieces and see if we can get some movement in them. Kind of get the feel for how much more hydration they may need, or if they're ready to go. This one feels pretty good. It's pretty easy to move. So these are the thorax, the head, and the main arms for predation. These are the ones that are going to hold like little clasps and waiting to pounce. And so I just want to make sure I can get the arm open here. That arm closes and opens decently. And then like all insects, you're going to have your 3 pairs of legs here. So this is the tibia, the femur, and this is this tarsi right here. And then you can see that it's got these tiny little tarsal phalange, like little claws here. So this is interesting how like this little thing would be like the major foot of a beetle. And what's funny about it is it's kind of evolution. It's like shrinks. because the main tool is right here between this part of the leg and this part that claps on the prey. And so this is kind of just like a small little guy. Dung beetles do this as well, where the feature of their tarses is diminished over time because all they really need to dig well and roll dung and stuff is just the bigger parts of their legs. And so some of these other features that you find prominent on other insects get really small. And then, you know, this is a tiny little foot. So gonna go ahead and put this part down, and then I'm gonna see how this is working out here. And so you can see the abdomen here with the other pairs of legs. The appendages come out. You see your tarses, your tibia, your femur, and then this guy, a little crunchy, long legs here. This little section is pretty flat on beetles. In fact, it doesn't come out at all as far as like away from the main part of the body. It's kind of rolled in, and so you see the femur and the tibia, and then you barely see this part in a beetle. But they do have basically the same anatomy as far as what can slide, what can move, in what rotation, to give it a little bit more degrees of movement. And so he's ready to go. Some weakness in the leg here. So what I want to do is make sure the joint moves, and if there's any weakness in the leg itself as it dried, because you can get a nice bend anywhere, or even it pops right off. We're going to pull this leg out, maybe a little bit further. And like I said, I usually don't worry about things when they break. One thing that happens often enough is they'll come in multiple pieces, and all you really need to do is dry them out like you were going to anyways. And, oh, hey, Peanuts. Nice, thanks for dropping in. I'm glad it's your favorite insect. It's one of mine, too. Yes, and this is one of the largest species. There are definitely heavier rainforest species, I would say, in South America. But this guy's crazy. And then getting back to the kind of disarticulation or articulation or however you want to do it, these are very thin, delicate animals, very good at like hiding in leaf litter and very agile. And so the pieces are pretty weak. It's easy just to take them apart, paper them down, and then let them dry and then put it back together. But what I want to do is I want to go ahead and see if this one's going to let me open its wings up. And so beetles have a cool little diamond here, and then a straight section, and the two forewings kind of peel off, and they're called elytra. They're good for protection, but they're not useful for flying. These guys have similar situation, except for it crosses over. So one of the forewings comes over the other, and then they will fan open. And all I have to do is get my tweezers in here and see. There we go. So this forewing will come out like that. And then this one's easy to grab now that the other one's out of the way. And they just overlap. Like you just have to kind of find where the one is on top. And then their hind wings are doing the same thing. They overlap a little bit. And then you can see that one getting pulled out. So what I want to do is go ahead and start pinning these down before they start to get rigid and dry. And so I'm going to take a second here and kind of lock this mantid's head in, kind of keep it in place. And another reason why I like showing the bottom side of the mantids is so you can see the face and eyes. If I turned him over, some of this would cover his cool little patterns on his arms or his legs, and then you wouldn't get to see his mouth and stuff. So because he's separated, it actually makes it easier for me to find a better way to pin him. So I can keep this piece separate and just worry about it without it tugging on the other parts. Sometimes if you have the beetle or the insect, especially things like myriapods, like millipedes and centipedes, as you work one part of the body, it just drags the other part all over the place. And so now I'm going to try to get a decent spread here. You can see that this mantis is a big animal in the insect world. Just kind of get his mantle pinned down. Get a little bit over here so you guys can see that better. So this is the main weapon for predation. It's got huge spikes, probably 1/3 of a centimeter long in the bigger parts. There's one big hook here, and then this little guy is just kind of like a little middle finger that just hangs out. Like, this is going to be almost useless for predation, but when he's climbing around on leaves, why not? It doesn't hurt. Maybe I'll drag this out a little bit more. So this arm, you can tell how impressive it is when it's not folded. It's a pretty decent length here. Like, this thing is much larger. I mean, this is the stuff that you'll see actually going out of the insectivore range. Like, this could definitely catch a small bird, small lizards, other vertebrates. Will definitely be on the menu for something this size. Insects are extremely powerful for their size. You know, everyone talks about how ants can lift 50 times their own body weight with just their head. That's true. There are other records in the world, and I'm going to do a whole giant beetle species, and I'm going to go over some stats like that. You know, nowhere near the strength of a beetle of equal size, but still very powerful. Just the way their exoskeletons are and the way their muscles work, this thing can collapse its arms with way greater force, even though it only weighs a gram, like this part of its body. Beyond the ability for a small, like, lizard, gecko, small snake, hummingbird. No, they're not going to be able to escape once it's grabbed. But anyways, so we got this guy out here. He's got one little antenna. The other one might have fallen off somewhere, so I'll take a look for that. Just need to find one quick little thing here. There we go. All right, sorry about that. So usually I use pretty thick butterfly paper for wings and stuff. I have 1 centimeter and then I have 2. Or 1.5. These wings aren't going to be too heavy. They're not too substantial, so I can probably use the thin stuff. But what I want to do is, I'm pretty much certain that some of these legs are going to get covered by the wings, whether I flip them over or not. But what I like to do is anchor at least part of the body down. Again, I don't pierce the animal. I'm just trying to make sure that it's stable. And then I usually use both hind legs, but one kind of dislocated itself when I was testing it. So we're going to use one to anchor. So he's stuck now. And so what I want to do, because this one's anchored, is I'm going to go ahead and pull this forewing over here and have it nice and out. I'm going to lay this leg wherever. It's going to get covered by the wing, so I'm not going to worry too much about the orientation of this. And then I'm going to grab a little bit of butterfly paper, and I'm just going to pin it now. I'm going to loosely pin it because I may have to adjust it later. I think they look cool kind of straight out. Definitely in the wild, they're not going to try too hard to go above and beyond this kind of 90-degree angle here. But sometimes when you're pinning, you can make them a little bit more exaggerated, and so you can pull it out further. I want to make sure that this abdomen gets straight. So I'm going to try to pin something under it, under the other wing on the other side. So now when I pull this way, this leg is anchored down. And when I pull this way, the abdomen's anchored, so it should stop twisting pretty soon. And then I'm going to pull out the hind wing, the one that's actually super useful for flying. And I'm going to make sure it gets enough visibility here. Now I'll take a bigger strip. I'm going to go over the forewing again, pinch the hind wing, and get the whole thing best I can here. And so that looks pretty good to me. It did move a little bit, but I like the adjustment. That way you can get a sense of forewing and hind wing and not overlap them so that this looks like one big wing. This is a little bit more true to the anatomy here. So, more than halfway done. We got one little leg poking out, so you can definitely see that it is a true insect. You got the two wings getting situated here. What I do recommend anytime you pin an insect is make sure every surface of the wing, as best you can, is covered. They're very thin, especially the insects that are prone to fly a lot. They will have very large, thin wings compared to their body. And the only thing is if it's thin and it's been hydrated and it's drying, it's going to wrinkle. And so this very soft wing here will try to pull back and kind of wrinkle up. So I might take a thinner strip and just kind of cover this edge here. Just to make sure that it's getting pinned down on the edge. The wrinkles aren't a big deal, but a second aesthetic choice that I would avoid if I can. Now, this leg is about the same height as this one, so I'm going to see if I can't pull that off. Same system here. Always do the forewing first if you can. Get it out of the way, let it wrap up. Then once it's on the paper here, I'm just using its large vein here to push it forward, flatten it down. It looks to be about the same plane as the other one here, so I think that's going to be good. A good start. And then, again, not piercing the wing, just pinning the paper around the wing. Should be strong enough to keep it down. One thing I do recommend when pinning is at least the majority of your pins, if you can face it away from the specimen. So you're making an acute angle away from the specimen and an obtuse angle with your needle towards the specimen. And the reason to do that is in case the paper slips, it can't, it will ride up the needle depending on how you're pulling the paper. And so if you have the needles facing away from each other as you're pinning, that paper won't want to shift and slide up the needle. So this way it kind of guarantees that not only you're pinning the paper, you're securing it in a fastening type way over the insect wing. The next would be the hind wing. So I'm going to grab another piece here. And then this leg has got a little bit of extra movement in it. It's probably less hydrated than this other leg here, And so if I want to pull this wing out, I may have to also move that leg if I'm overly anal about this symmetry here. And so let's raise this up. I'm going to let him come out a little bit. And then going for symmetry here, this piece is a little further down. And then it's going to shift just a bit when I push it down. So this foot's kind of coming out of this nice little bump that's in the hind wing. So I'm going to grab the leg, move it towards that ridge there where the hind wing's veins kind of intersect. And I'm going to hold that down. And that's just going to add a little bit more symmetry to it. Again, when you're pinning an insect, do it the way you think is prettiest or satisfies the goal. Generally, I try to pick really cool big specimens that are obviously been described, you know, like this is definitely a member of the species and genus. And so I don't worry too much about the specific scientific way of doing every single insect. I try to go for the art as much as the science, but sometimes if the legs are diminutive or strange, or they didn't dry right, or they're not hydrating correctly, and they're not going to be pretty, then I'll just fold them underneath the body, and I'll say, you know what, I didn't get it this time. I still have a really pretty insect. It's still an animal that lived at one point, grew to an adult, is a impressive specimen, and so it deserves to be showcased in its best light. And so that's what I'm going for. So this leg did detach. We got the knee, or if you want to call it a knee here. So I'm going to say that angle goes up to the attachment point, which is just underneath these other pairs of legs. So I'm just going to kind of mimic this angle. I'll pull it down a little bit further. And then I'm going to kind of grab that little knee there again. Here. It wants to slide on me, so I'm actually going to hold the foot with a needle, and then I'm going to hold the leg again. Then this way, I can try to mimic, this kind of looks like a 45-degree angle here. And so this is going to come out. This is going to come out. Once I raise it up, that knee should get closer. So I think that's a little bit better here. So I'll eventually turn the whole thing over when it's dried completely. I'll reattach the legs using different types of adhesives or resin, depending on what's working best for the species. A lot of the time, clear nail polish is a perfectly good substitute. They actually sell clear nail polish as insect glue for a premium when you could just use clear nail polish. It works very well for your nails, which is a very similar carbohydrate. You know, this is keratin. The carbohydrate that is the exoskeleton is called chitin in insects, and it's very similar carbohydrate structure. So the clear nail polish will work for either one perfectly. And it is a glue for bugs as it is a glue for human fingernails. And so we're going to get a little bit of structure change here. The abdomens of these guys is very soft, very thin, you know. So it's always going to play a little bit and change shape as it dries and it shrinks. But that's all something we can deal with as the days go on. In about a week, periodically I'll check on this and make sure that I like where the setting is. You know, is he a little bit at an angle? Is this one higher than this one? You know, and I can play with that if I want. But as it goes, this is a decent setup for a devil rose mantis, in my opinion. I may only change a small degree of the leg here at this time. But I think that's gonna do it. So I'll flip this body over when it's dried and stable, clean it up, fix any joints that I think might have integrity issues, go ahead and reattach the thorax and the abdomen together. This space literally locks on to the back of this. It's got little plates for protection and armor to the softer bit, so it's literally going to be like a lock and key. It's just going to slide and stick right in. I can even fill it full of glue to give it a little extra internal integrity. But this is the Idolomantis diabolica, which is the giant African devil rose mantis. And other than a few tweaks here and there, just to kind of make them look a little bit more imposing, or her a little bit more imposing, that's about it. And I appreciate you guys watching. Thank you so much.